Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So as you can see here, we have a Mini-ITX based PC I built for around 400 Australian dollars. Now you might be wondering why I'm not introducing this like a regular PC I usually do, and that's because the power supply died. Yeah. I've used several of these units in the past and I have no idea why this one just decided to up and die after I've been testing it for a whole week. Before we move on, I'd like to go over the specs of this PC. We have an Intel Xeon E3-1245V2, 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM, an XFX RX 488GB, a 256GB SSD, and 750GB HDD, all wrapped inside the Fractal design node 304. Now this configuration should consume around 283 watts in total, which is no problem for our 500 watt power supply that died. But yeah, this config is super power hungry and we need a good unit to replace that. So right about now you might be wondering, what unit have I chosen to replace the dead power supply? Well, you might not like the answer. That's right, we'll be using the VS350 from Corsair. This is your standard run-of-the-mill 350 watt 80 plus bronze unit, but since this is a VS orange label from 2012, let's just say it has a pretty bad reputation. It has 300 watts on the 12 volt line though, which is alright and should accommodate for our specs somewhat. And there it is in the system. Now I'll be honest, I won't stick with this power supply. I already have something else coming in, but in the meantime, we can test this thing out and see if it will blow up the system or not. These things have a reputation for blowing up, so, you know, it is what it is. Alright, so as you can see, the system is up and running. I'm playing some Overwatch here just fine without issues, which means that cutting it close does work, but cheaping out on the power supply is something I'll never ever recommend. Still, with this being a low budget gaming PC, I did test it out with a few games in my library and added benchmarks for those who are still curious about the performance. With that said, I'll be testing the power consumption stats for the CPU and GPU across multiple game titles today, as well as 2 stress tests, being Unigen Heaven and Furmark. So let's get right into it, shall we? So starting off with Valorant, it is a pretty CPU intensive game, so as you can see here, our GPU is not being used that much, which means its power consumption usually stays at below 60 watts. And combined with around 40 watts of power consumption for our CPU, this means that we're only sitting at about 100 watts of power consumption in total, which is perfectly safe for this 350 watt unit. Now moving on to Overwatch, this is at low settings, but somehow both components are being used equally, so this means that the power consumption for the GPU jumped to 100 to 110 watts, while the CPU stays pretty consistent at around 40 plus. So it's a bit higher than the Valorant results, but nothing we can't handle. At 1080p competitive settings with performance mode, we're experiencing a bit of a CPU bottleneck, so the GPU is being used less, but unlike Valorant, it still has jumps in the power consumption. This in turn means the system consumes about 90 to 130 watts of power in total. As for Apex, we're on 1080p high settings, so the GPU is being used to its limit, but it's still sitting around that 110 watts of power consumption. When combined with the GPU, it's around 140 to 150 watts, which is well within our safe threshold. Forza Horizon 5 produced the same results as Apex Legends, which really surprised me because I thought this game would push the system much more, considering how our CPU is rated for 77 watts of max power and our GPU 150 watts. Still within the threshold of 300 watts, but to get this low power consumption is pretty unusual, at least to me. So moving on to our GPU stress test, we have Furmarks. After a 20-minute burn-in test, we received a maximum power consumption metric of around 97 watts, and the temp stayed pretty alright at 81 degrees. It's pretty toasty, but that's normal for a blower card. On the other hand, Unigine Heaven tests both the CPU and GPU, and it produces pretty similar numbers to Apex and Forza. I also ran the program overnight to make sure that there's no issues, or the system would just blow up or anything, but it finished the benchmarks just fine, and it ran overnight without issues. And with that, we've reached the conclusion that yes, this power-hungry system can run with a weak and unreliable power supply from 2012. Does that mean you should do it? Once again, don't do it. Get a quality unit, maybe around 500 watts, 80 plus bronze from EVGA, Corsair, just any reputable brand you can find. Just because I'm a budget PC tech advocate, that doesn't mean I'm telling you to skimp on parts and risk your own safety or your own PC's safety to save a few dollars. It's never worth it. This video in essence was just me trying to spin an unfortunate situation into content. And I know this isn't the best way to do it, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you liked what you've seen here today, I hope you guys can like the video if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you found some parts you didn't really like, and I hope to see you all around for my future content, whether it's good or bad, and hope you'll have a nice day or night wherever you are.